Actually, no physicist that truly understand the quantum mechanics at all. So what's the consequences is I try to say every biology, every chemistry, all the class, all the principles are wrong principles. So that's why they never talk and never make sense to each other. So that's why you never see people talking to each other. They are afraid to say anything because everything is laughable. Does not make any sense. I just give you the little bit of view. So why people work on silo is not because they have a super high technology intelligence, because they don't know anything well.
A neighbor's choice.
Well, we're excited for our guest today on our show. We're doing a discussion that will cross over many topics, I think, but it's going to probably be anchored in science and healing and so forth. But our guest today is Logan Duvall from the Sowing Prosperity podcast. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, David. Thank you for the invitation. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, and we have joining us now, if you're listening on our audio podcast, we also have our chief science advisor, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, Dr. Yu continues to become a viral sensation. Everywhere you go, the whole people, they're talking about Dr. Yu's revolutionary Yuan theory. So many people, we get in the comments said, my God, this is the biggest truth bomb I've ever heard. Changes my life. I don't know what to do. So Dr. Yu's really just ascending right now. But Logan, I wanted to have you on because I think you're part of this journey of investigation that we're on. You know, I saw what you're doing, and I want you to tell your story a little bit because you got a powerful story. You're on a mission to destroy cancer, aren't you?
I sure am. Yeah, that's a huge part of what I do. So I am in Central Arkansas and have a farmers market. So a outdoor grocery store that's based on farmers market. So building out local food systems is what I really focus on. It's the day job, so to speak. And my grandparents actually started the market, and my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer early on. So non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, he overcame that through conventional means, and then ended up with esophageal cancer that metastasized to his liver, and it was brutal, right? Like the whole battle was very difficult on him, difficult on my grandmother, who was the caregiver, and somehow we limped along with my mother's help of having the market continue going. And so after he passed away, I moved down to join the market and help continue, just trying to operate it. Fast forward a little bit, that was 2019 or 17. 2019, my oldest was 5 years old and diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer, so Wilms tumor. And so the second round of cancer shock, right? This is after having a career in EMS, so emergency medical services, and I did real estate and farm. Grew up in a real rural area to where everybody did agriculture. So just couldn't understand why in the world my baby got cancer, So he came to me one evening and said, "Dad, my pee's orange." And I was like, "What?" So I go into the bathroom and it's blood in the toilet. And so we fast forward, go through the hospital, find out that, it is indeed stage 4 cancer. And so I remember sitting there and I was like, the doctors are going to do their part. They're gonna do what they need to do. God's gonna do his part, and I'm gonna do mine. And so, what is that? What do I do? How do I understand and approach and focus on what I can control? And so I just started asking the oncologists the different questions, like, what do I feed him? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Then they try to give them like soft drinks or popsicles and these different types of quote unquote rewards for going through whatever was happening at the time. So I just began devouring books, everything that I possibly could on alternative cancer nutrition, what was going on. That led me down rabbit trail after rabbit trail. Actually, one of the very first books that I now don't agree with at all is actually the China study that broke out like a correlation between meat and cancer, casein protein to be specific. The And so just as I kept attempting to learn more, I decided to start creating content around it, right? Like I want to share what we were doing, like why magnesium was important, why we were doing certain things with the diet, why we weren't doing certain things. And so that led me to start getting experts on, right? Start a podcast, and it gave me a selfish reason to be able to talk to them, right? Or give them a reason to want to talk to me, give them some exposure, you know? And so that's just led to the point to where I believe everything that we have been told is wrong. And the way that we need to look at that is about 180 degrees from where we are. We're very siloed in our understanding of everything, right? What physics doesn't talk to biologists, doesn't talk to nephrologists, right? Like just on and on and on. Like we are very siloed in that approach. And that reasoning is why I don't think that we've cured cancer yet. And I think there's some other nefarious things going on behind the scenes, but it's decentralizing that knowledge and having these conversations and bringing things together that actually work is a big deal. And I don't care necessarily why everybody is missing a piece or why they're wrong, and to spend time arguing over who's wrong about this and why they're wrong. I want to grow food and cure cancer. Like,
Mhm.
so those are the kind of conversations I have.
That's wonderful. So obviously you've been doing something with your son that's helping him, right? So he's, something you're making some breakthroughs there.
Yeah, so he went stage 4 to cancer free in 8 months. He's doing
Wow.
great now.
Praise
Just
God. Glory to God.
Amen. I homeschool. I've got 4 kids now. They're outside, they're playing, and I want to get into that for sure, right? Like
Yeah.
the lies on the sun and eating theories and those kind of things. What cancer is, because we're wrong about cancer, and and how we can apply it to help other people.
That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little more details about how you went from stage 4 to cancer free in 8 months? That's a phenomenal testimony.
Yeah, so we did conventional treatment, right? So
Right.
he did have 16 rounds of radiation targeted. We did do chemotherapy, vincristine, doxorubicin, doctinomycin. Did surgery, right? He had the tumor, it's cantaloupe-sized kidney tumor, removed, and had metastasized to some lymph nodes and then the chest wall, which was a little bit abnormal. It's typically inside the lung. So we did all that, completely started trying to embrace some of the biohacking, right? Like this is kind of what got me into the science. And Dave Asprey had a huge influence on me early on,
You get that
just starting to
mycotoxin
understand.
free coffee?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I mean, Danger
Yeah.
Coffee is really the only one that I drink now,
Yeah.
right? For that, but it was an introduction to like infrared light and why was red light therapy was going, and which made it easier to understand the biology that is impacted by the sun and the different light spectrums. Uh, we did use some supplements. I'm not a huge proponent of supplements, but minerals are extremely important. We've ruined agriculture, ruined the soils, and the minerals aren't in there. So there's times where we do need to supplement.
Yeah.
Trying to get the gut microbiome lined back out. One of the big keys was, and this was to Dave's credit, I began reading studies, right? And one thing he said was, you're not going to know this at first, and it's okay to not know this. Read the study, continue listening, read it again, and then you'll pick up. And as you go through it, you'll start picking up more and more and more. Because I have no formal education whatsoever. I got an EMT, right? Petroleum technology, a certificate. The Looking at a lot of the immunotherapies and some of these cancer treatments, they were completely dependent on the gut flora, the microbiome that was there. If certain bacteria weren't there, it didn't work. If they were there, it did work. So I asked an oncologist, 40-year veteran, okay, what do you think about some of these studies that are coming out with it? Oh, I don't know anything about the gut microbiome. Right. And so that's where, I mentioned earlier about the siloing of information, of education and these fields is really at a detriment to all of us. Is if we're going to be an oncologist for 40 years and we don't know anything about the gut microbiome, that's a big red flag to me.
Mhm. Yeah. So you got into light, red light. We talk about that. So what are some of the lifestyle? You said that you keep your kids outside. Do they not allowed to watch TV or screen time? Like, what are the things that you think are so essential with the light question?
Yeah, the light is the question. The light is the foundation of everything that I believe. And so I like to use an analogy of a light of a water hose. Okay, so we have two water hoses hooked together, and we have different pressures on each side, right? If we have more pressure on one side, it pushes it, right? If it goes to the other side, so there's this lack of a better term. I don't like the term balance necessarily because everything oscillates. But when you have too much for force on one direction, say blue light, right? We're toxic with our blue light from LEDs, the phones, the computers. It's like my screen is actually red right here. When we have these different spectrums that are causing problems, and we can go into what those problems are, it's harder to overcome it. So when that doesn't exist, and then we have the benefits of the other hosts coming in that we're building, we're strengthening, we're doing the biological processes from these light inputs, they're working properly, we get power. So it's this oscillation between the artificial environment we live in and the natural cycle being in nature. So like if we do watch TV and stuff, we're wearing blue blocker glasses. They are covered up because we have visual and non-visual photoreceptors, right? So it's not just our eyes that are getting impacted by light. And so when
You
they're
cover up by
outside,
just
they
wearing
spend
long
most, this
sleeve.
is
You're saying like wearing long sleeve outfits and pants and stuff when they're watching TV.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like in the evening, if we watch a movie, and like we watched a movie like we watched Terminator last night because I think AI is interesting and
Yeah.
possibly terrifying. So we watched Terminator, so that we all had our glasses on, everybody's covered up, we got some face exposed, whatever. But you just kind of you don't have to necessarily go to the extreme of no technology whatsoever because I think that it's vital.
Yeah.
But you need to be smart about it. So, like my kids on a phone, never. Right. That they ever that doesn't happen. But like we do some YouTube for education for homeschool, and we do watch some movies and things like that.
Yeah. And so how do you like measure how much of a difference it's making? Like, when you take those measures of, some people, know that blue light, they've heard it's a popular trope that blue light's bad for you, but then they stick phones in their kids' faces all the time too, because they can't measure, when they're young, a lot of people, that's why they feed them seed oil nuggets and stuff like that, is they just think I'm just, we'll see those downstream effects when they're 50 and I'll be able to wash my hands from it when they get diagnosed with diabetes. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of parents do it. Even the ones who are a little bit aware of what's right, they don't care enough in the short term, as long as there's no disease manifesting right now, unless you have a wake up call like what you had. I mean, they don't want to do anything. So how do you
I would
measure the
argue.
differences that you've seen?
Well, I mean, it's subjective. You just look around, right? Like my kids are going to be completely different than other kids we say. Just
Yeah.
look at what happens when you take a iPhone or an iPad away from a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
lose it, right? They,
Yeah.
they lose it. A lot. You go to a restaurant, you see all kids are sitting there at a table on some sort of a device. It's because
Yeah.
it's addicting, and that goes into. I would say it is the largest addiction problem we have is the blue light. That is bar none.
They're addicted to the sensation of blue light, not the content, almost, right? And that
Well, it's
they,
both, right? It's been engineered to have this addiction from the content, but it's also the blue light, and this isn't even new. Like
yeah.
this has been laid out for since
So a lot of people don't know that, what you just said, that blue light itself is an addicting sensation. That's a lot of people don't know that. That's very important for people to think about, because they just think, oh, I just got to find some wholesome content on the, no, that the blue light itself will be addicting. And when they have it broken from them, it probably does create a stress response, doesn't it?
It absolutely creates a stress response. So one of the things that, and it was about 2014 when this came out, we have these photoreceptors called opsins, right? Melanopsin. And this is a blue light detector, and we have it everywhere. We have it in our blood vessels, on our skin, in all of our tissue. Okay, so this is functions off of blue light. So when you have these opsins, then blue light causes vitamin A to be liberated. Okay. And so when vitamin A is liberated, it becomes this just chaos, just destructor wrecking ball that goes in and starts destroying chromophores and other functioning parts of biology, right? And this is this cascading effect. So the big problem with that that kicks it off is this liberated vitamin A. And this is where you get some of the nonsense around vitamin A toxicity and stuff. And if you're not able to take the biology and take the physics of what's going on in there. So, for example, when you see eyes, you have rods and cones, right? This epithelial tissue in there. This also where melanin comes in. Light hits, it releases vitamin A. This is part of the process to what gives us vision, actually. And so it's when it's contained within this system, it's okay. When we have excessive liberated vitamin A and it starts wrecking, the cascading effects of that are absolutely detrimental. And so this is where you start seeing a lot of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, macular degeneration, cataracts, like on and on and on. We can see what's happening there. Something else that's very is unbelievably important is that blue light, independent of eating, raises blood sugar and insulin. Like this is it's in the literature, right? It's right there. All we got to do is look at it. So, and this actually works through the protein called POMC, pro-opiomelanocortin, is the big protein that's cleaved into different products. So this is alpha, beta, gamma, MSH, MCT, CLIP, CLP, beta, endorphins, metenkephalin. So there's all kinds of downstream things. This is where we actually make melanin, is through this process. But through CLIP, CLP, this is where cortical-like protein, insulin-like protein. So it causes our blood sugar to increase based on blue light. So what I'm saying to you is diabetes is a blue light disease, right? And more so than even food. Now that sounds crazy. Like a lot of people probably just turned off the interview. This guy's nuts. But look at the literature. It's there. It's right there. Blue light raises it. Red light lowers blood sugar. So when we know just that one simple little fact that's absolutely proven, the hide from the sun nonsense and live in artificial light, and we can't figure out why chronic disease is skyrocketing, I can assure you it's more than just food.
So your studies, how much sunlight should people be getting then, direct, and how does that work?
As much as possible. As much as possible. And so this is the other nuance that is unbelievably important is like we live on Earth, okay, with lots of locations, that lots of different latitudes, right? So when we are at the equator is different than when we're at the poles, right? There is a huge variation in the UV intensity, in seasons. So depending on where we are, this whole environmental impact is different, right? So if we're in Ecuador, right, we have very standard, steady everything within life, right? It's at the equator, it does not change much. When we're at Anchorage, Alaska, we have 23 hours of dark in the winter and 23 hours of light in the summer, right? That's a completely different spot. So what I would say is that depending on where we are, we need to get as probably as much as possible. And we look at this ancestrally speaking, while we have Nairobi has extremely dark skinned people, right? Whereas in Northern Europe, it's much lower melanin content, right? Where cold was embraced. We start looking at some of these Nordic cultures, how the Finnish utilized cold therapy, like all of these different things, because cold is the inverse. And this is where I was kind of excited to get Dr. Yu's take. The magnetism piece is directly related to the cold piece, right? Magnetism is increased, is improved within cold versus hot. So you have this spectrum of the electric and the magnetic that go hand in hand. It's not one or the other, but one of them matters more depending on if it's night or day. You're at a temperate climate or at the equator, right? So there's not a standard answer. We should all have 8 hours of sun a day.
But depending on if you live in a warmer, if you live closer to the equator, you can get less, you can be okay, or which way is, I mean, what does that look like? I'm in Florida, so should we be getting in the sun all the time?
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
first of all, I don't believe like the sun causes cancer and all of these things. Like, if you've watched my stuff much, I've got Dr. Moore was recently on. He's one of the world-renowned melanin experts, and that goes in. But naturally, you can see what ancestrally was the skin type of the natives of there. So when you take an Aborigine, it looks completely different than the British, uh, imports, right? Like when
Yeah.
you look at Sydney and it's all pale skinned blondes with blue eyes, they look completely different than what the Aborigines who developed in that place over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So melanin content is the natural ability of being able to utilize. So what I'm telling you though is the flip side of that. When you take somebody from Somalia and you put them in Detroit, you're going to have a mismatch. They
Yeah.
need the more melanin we naturally have, the more sun that we
Yeah.
actually need. And so this is why we have stroke belts. This is
And
why we
that's
see
why we have high crime in some of these cities because it's stressed out. It's too stressed out.
ab-
The
Absolutely. So the
pressure
lack of
cooker.
sun is a stressor if we are very melanated. Now,
Yeah.
the flip side of that, and this is what makes it so complicated and why I get aggravated on what we were saying on the siloed aspects, is because we actually have two major classes of mitochondria. So we have the coupled and uncoupled haplotypes. And this is all based off of the work of Dr. Doug Wallace from CHOP, so Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. When we have a uncoupled haplotype, we really need cold. We've got to be able to embrace cold. This is part of the heteroplasmy and how we produce energy and the efficiency of. When we are coupled, the cold is actually problematic. This is why when we see the sommelier in Milwaukee or Detroit or Ontario, they have more of these health problems, is because the cold is actually a stressor if you have that coupled haplotype. And so, uh, man, David, this is why there's just layers upon layers
Yeah.
upon layers of nuances
Yeah.
within the entire conversation.
Yeah. I want Dr. You to jump in now because I kind of wanted to set it out with some basic questions, and Dr. You can dive into some deeper science if you want.
Yes, very telling story, and also you come up to your own conclusion. And I want to address one thing you mentioned about, say, the right now this different disciplines work in silos. You mentioned, right? Even the doctors in almost the same profession, and they are not talking each other. I try to explain the reason happens in academia. And first, start from our education, because of the fundamental principle we were taught at school, even worse at the university. So I said that you did not go to university, it's good for you. And so those fundamental principles is started from the, actually root cause started over 100 years ago. In 1897, the first discovery, scientist, that's J.J. Thomson, discovered the electron. Since then, they laid the physics foundation. All the physics based on the charge, electric charge, right? The negative charge electron, and then people build up on what is a positive charge, the nucleus, and then build a model like a solar planetary atomic model. These are all wrong concept. So what's the consequences of this atomic model? Have something constantly running without the dissipated energy, without the impact, without destroy itself, become perpetual motion machine. This is a crazy idea, and somehow being bought by entire scientific academia community, becomes educational class in every teach every I believe even started the middle school physics book, chemistry, biology. I'm right now writing the section biology and the chemistry. They all based on the quantum principle. The quantum principle is based on the planetary, solar planet-like type of atomic models. And that model is completely wrong. What I discovered is there are no any particles, also what they called revolute or traveling or orbiting around any so-called nucleus. None of them correct. So there are no electron called negative charge because our entire foundation is wrong. So you know what happens to each category? Biologists, chemists, they don't know, and they don't understand quantum mechanics. However, somebody derived the so-called solution. So they try to use that solution. They don't understand anything. Actually, no physicist that truly understand the quantum mechanics at all. So what's the consequences? Is I try to say every biology, every chemistry, all the class, all the principles are wrong principles. So that's why they never talk and never make sense to each other. So that's why you never see people talking to each other. They are afraid to say anything because everything is laughable. Does not make any sense. I just give you the little bit of view. So why people work on silo is not because they have a super high technology intelligence, because they don't know anything well.
Go. So, one thing that is extremely offensive that I have observed is that biology and chemistry aren't fundamental sciences. And so I know that's going to be super offensive to people, but physics is, right? And then what you're saying, and I have another, yeah, a mentor of sorts, Dr. Barry Ninham down in Australia. And Dr. Ninham has some very interesting ideas around nanobubbles and the glycocalyx and cavitation. And that's something that is completely, and Dr. Ninham, I think he's 89. He's been doing it a long time, right? And so like he would say, we're missing a lot in physics that we don't understand. And so like when you go back to the basics of that, maybe we're not even correct on physics, and chemistry and biology aren't even fundamental sciences, it kind of shows you how much we don't know.
Exactly. So, even the fundamental science, you are talking about the mathematics, or we are talking about, say, fundamentally, what would be physics, right? And sorry about it, I lost the screen. You know, and actually, they have been taught lies, of course, to them. They believe it because it's somebody they believe that's the truth for whole life. Say, say chemical bonds based on the electron. Electron in physics class is always constantly nearly speed, a fraction of a speed of light, orbiting, right? So however, chemists try to build a stable chemical bond based on the shared electron. Does that feels like a ridiculous to you? So that's why they can never develop any coherent chemical theory, because chemists have no say on fundamental principle because they believe they are all not fundamental. So I have at NASA we have a lot of chemists. Almost every single chemist, you want to find a good job, you have to be a PhD and have to hold a postdoctor position in order to have any value. Otherwise, just doing experiment in the laboratory. I believe that's the only way they learn, is from experiment, from test. So they learn something. Anything they learned from the principle are wrong. So that's why it makes us, the PhD from chemistry and the biology extremely hard. Not that they are specialty subjects, but because they have to require to learn fundamental discipline, classes, right? Make them super hard. And now I found, oh my goodness, millions of people being misled by this fundamental mistake made at the beginning, at the end of the 19th century.
Yeah,
that's the background I just share you. So
it's like looking at the iceberg when you wake up and you realize, wait a second, medical science is bad. So that's the tip of the iceberg. And as you get closer, you're like, oh wait, biology's garbage. You see more of the iceberg, and then you see chemistry is wrong. And then when you get
biology based on the chemistry,
yeah, and
then
when
chemistry is garbage.
Yeah, and
also chemistry based on the physics. Physics theory is garbage now.
Yeah.
So that's why. So I'm not blame all the professors. They are not talking. You mentioned about the silos. It's not because they don't want to communicate. They have nothing to share. That's the problem.
Something that I have been really fascinated with is twofold. One, I think that we have a language barrier within science, right? And so, for example, when you look at the work of, say, Gilbert Ling, right, what he was trying to describe is very hard to understand based on language not matching up. And I put this at for a football analogy, right? Let's say we're running an offense and we call a certain route by a name that is different than a different offense, right? You're calling similar actions, but it's called a different name based on how you conduct the offense, defense, whatever. So I find when I am attempting to look at works of, say, Fritz Popp, Roland Van Wyck, Maywin Ho, Gilbert Ling, Feynman, on and on and on. Like, we have this incongruency in terminology that makes it very difficult to even try to grasp. Perigene, right? Like, trying to understand dissipative structures. When you go through there, it makes it really difficult. And when you're already taught a certain way of thinking, it makes it even more challenging to decipher it.
Exactly. You mentioned about why they use different terminology. That is the one way they try to get by masquerading their ignorance. Let me tell you how physics can be propagated over 100 with 150 100 with no 100 almost 130 years. Okay, I'm going to say 140 with 47 years. I'm talking about just say started from the last the end of the 19th century. But why this theory propagated for so long? They use a different language. That means a decent term, right? Suddenly, hey, we have electrons. Hey, people say, hey, we never in the life have anyone in life see what the electron looks like. Nobody. So, so that's something it's never existed before. So you see, that's one example, right? And then now in the quantum example, they cannot solve the equations. They said, hey, you said the electron orbited as nucleus does not make sense, right? They say, hey, let's blend it over. So we have no particles. We have a wave. This is the wave particle duality. Make an electron as a clouds. Okay, clouds have no orbits, no locations. Okay, just based on probability. You see, now I said clouds. Electron becomes electron clouds. Now in the orbit, no orbitals now. Now orbit becomes different. Oh, we use orbital. Orbital be the biggest area now, right? It's no trajectory. We take trajectory out. We don't know what the orbital is. Is a region, a special shape or something. Just say hey, we don't know where it is, but probability in that region. All these terms invented. Quantum mechanics, entanglement, some tunneling, and especially if you look at the equation, those mathematical symbols, they're changing the mathematical symbols. Look at quantum mechanics symbols. Nobody recognizes what they do, what they say. So that's the tool used to shielding criticism and covering their ignorance. That's my discovery. I may insult somebody, but I believe problem is much serious than that one. That derailed the scientific advancement for centuries.
Yeah. The I don't know how to say this. I don't know how y'all's channel is, but I still feel like, and I gotta be careful about this with you, Dr. Yu, because of who you're associated with. I feel like we know more behind the scenes on some things that are being used. Just like the blue light is addictive, that is not new information, and it is being used against us. 100%.
Oh, sure. So these can explained by classical electrodynamics, so light, electricity, but these are not the principles. There are some phenomena we can explain them, right? So like a blue light, so why blue lights are worse than green lights? The most human friendly light, all the biology friendly light is a blue light, because blue light is right at the center of the visible light spectrum. So that's how all the biological life comes out. We are generated because of blue light, because of green. I'm talking about the green lights. Green lights has a less than the frequency, so have a longer wavelength. It's less harmful, or I would say more coherent in biological life.
But, one thing about the green light specifically is it changes this charged state of iron, right? So like this directly affects hemoglobin, right? We either have met hemoglobin or we have appropriate hemoglobin that transports oxygen. That's just one example, and we don't have that spectrum that we're exposed to within this artificial light mix that only comes from sun. So like one way you brought up green light, and I think it's fascinating. We don't have enough conversations about it. Is we have what's called the green flash. This is a phenomenon that happens at the beginning and end of of every single day. You're not always able to see it. You can see it on a beach where you have a wide horizon that you can look at, but it's this flash of a green light. It's a green flash. To me, I think that it is a time stamping, right? For biology to have that input, right? Because light is information, right? That is extremely
Of
important. I
course.
don't think that we talk about enough either. But the timing of all of this is unbelievably important, and time being relative and on different scales, right? The circadian timing within a mitochondria is different from the timing of the seasons, is different from the timing of the day,
Oh,
right?
okay.
When you have time that is thrown off, none of what we're talking about works properly. Nothing, right? This is why I think that it's extremely important. Let me give you one example. We're told tanning beds are good or tanning beds are bad, right? It's UVA, it's UVB, right? That's the only thing that we're really talking about. Oh, it doesn't have infrared or it does have infrared, so it's good for you. Well, let's throw that side of the conversation out. Let's say that we use a full spectrum UVB included tanning bed at midnight versus we use it at solar noon. You think that has a different signaling input to the body? Absolutely. So when we are confusing the entire system with inappropriate light signals, we throw off timing of the entire organism. This is a big problem. And I think that physics could allow us to better understand that better than any other field, but we have to have the conversation on timing if we're going to overcome cancer.
I agree. I just want to clarify, when you talking about the timing, are you referring to seasons or re referring anytime during the day or during the week?
I'm talking about timing as in so many different
In
contexts, right?
biology, he's
Yeah, I'm talking about it all. I'm talking about from the timing of light within the ultra weak biophotons, the coherence, the oscillation of light. Say the mitochondria produce light. That is one of the things they do, and we don't talk about that. We're only told that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell and they produce ATP. So much more, right? It produces metabolic water, it produces CO2, reactive oxygen species, on and on and on, right? It does so much. But one thing that it does is it produces light. It does produce light. This light then goes to the chromatin, which is histones and DNA that receives. DNA is a light antenna. That's what it is. Within the little H's, this absorbs and holds light. It then emits it. So what we have within healthy cells and cancerous cells is a difference in timing of that light. It's called delayed bioluminescence. In a cancer cell, it cannot hold on and emit, right? We have emission and absorption spectrums within literally everything. So if we are unable to time the exit, the emission of this light properly, the entire system within the cell doesn't work properly, right? Genes aren't expressed properly. We have too much growth, not enough growth, right? So, Dr. Yu, something else that I find absolutely fascinating is I've tried to understand deuterium because deuterium inside the mitochondria destroy everything, right? It destroys the ATPase, which is the nanomotor. And I do want to circle back on that too, because a nanomotor actually creates a magnetic field that draws oxygen through. I think that's extremely important for us to
Yes.
highlight as well. But if we have deuterium, right? This is a isotope of hydrogen, right? It has an extra neutron, so it changes the mass. What happens under a pressure, a squeezing, electro or magnetic squeezing, it emits UV light. We know this in engineering with a deuterium lamp, right? This is how we get a UV light. So now if we have excessive UV light that's creating more growth, right? That's cancer, right? So this is just one mechanism of that. So we're destroying this whole symphony of things that emit and absorb light within a cell, and the timing of all of that light, the intensity, the fidelity of the signal within that cell is what we have got to line out. And the way we do that is by eating local, seasonal, natural, be grounded with appropriate magnetism, right? A desert does not have appropriate magnetism. Let's look at the Aborigines again, and being in the sun. That is how we correct the signal of all of it. So this is where, it really doesn't matter who's right or wrong. How do we cure cancer and how do we grow food? Like that's my focus.
Yes, I just want to, based on the your talking, your explanation, uh, uh, induce my thoughts. So yeah, so that's how we are created. Some new ideas come from. So you said deuterium is resided inside of a what is a cell? Is that right? Inside of
It,
cell,
so I think
and
that
then
this is actually, Dr. Yu, this is exactly why we have a Krebs cycle. It's to get deuterium out. It's to
right,
isolate
right,
hydrogen and utilize hydrogen, and we're trying to keep deuterium out. I think that's the
right.
entire Krebs cycle. When it gets inside of the mitochondria,
Then they
right,
destroy everything, right? You know the
destroys
reason,
everything.
yeah. So I'll try to explain why deuterium can destroy everything, because deuterium is a radioactive material. It's unstable uh, isotope of hydrogen, right? So that's why it's a in we call it heavy water or something, right? So that's what is a radioactive element, very easy to induce nuclear. So we use heavy water, induce nuclear bomb. So what is the physical mechanism behind it? Is because it is unstable, means very easy to be excited by environmental excitation and becomes oscillating. When you're oscillating, you radiate light. So you said, hey, we have a light come out, mitochondria. So we know, yeah, mitochondria is highly active, magnetically strong, polarization is strong and active. When this kind of particle oscillating, you generate light. You know why sometimes you do not see light? We are talking about the visible light, right? Had a certain frequency. Normally, if they oscillating vibration less than visible light, you do not detect a visible light. You have to use the equipment. There's an electromagnetic oscillation, right? So I just try to say. So now coming back to say, hey, you're talking about why light can help, or you even mentioned the electromagnetic field. Magnet can help healing them. So for me, physically, so sunlight could, meaning sunlight is more friendly to human body, right? To biology, right? Sunlight itself generates electromagnetic wave, or generate electricity under your skin, or in your body. Because of skin oscillating generate bioelectricity, right? So these are more, I would say, coherent light. So this light acted as a counter agent to what you talk about. You talk blue light. Blue light is a minority among solar lights. Of course, sunlight have them, right? So basically, you try to use most of the healthy magnetic field to neutralize or to reduce, to counter balance those kind of harmful radioactive type of high frequency oscillation. So that's for me. So why light help you? Light help you generate electricity. You feel warm, you feel hot, burning. You are burning not because of the light, not because of light impact. Light does not have particle impact. Light is oscillation, vibration, oscillation. So generate electricity in your body. So that electricity can travel. So you one place burning, your whole body will feel like burning. Feels like I cannot tolerate, right? So that's why, because the signal is through electromagnetic signal, through bioelectricity throughout your body. And I believe that's a part. And the counter field. You said, hey, we are not balanced. Now you bring balance to counter this radioactive material in your body, destroy yourself.
What you just laid out was why water and melanin are so important as well, right? Because this is what is that medium that conducts that entire electromagnetic system.
Number one, they are conductor, right? Conducting. Number two, they are acted as a resistant. They create a viscosity, resistance, right? Counter radioactive material. Radioactive materials vibrate at high frequency. You know what happens? What happens to high frequency oscillation? Create high heat, and burn through your cells, create cancer. That's how cancer created.
So based on the work of Nick Lane, the mitochondria produce 30 million volts of electricity. Now
Oh
think
my
about
God.
that.
I didn't know
From
the volts level.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that is the equivalent of lightning. Now, granted, this is on a scale, right? As it
Of course,
shrinks
yes.
down, it becomes the
The
equivalent of
scaling
lightning.
up, yes.
So melanin is one of the most electromagnetic uh, materials that there is when it's dry. Now, so what do we do? Now, this is where it's really, really, really interesting to look at the work of Robert O. Becker that laid out the regenerative potential. Okay. So the electricity it takes to take a red blood cell, and granted, this has no nucleus, no mitochondria, and convert it into a stem cell is under 1 trillionth of an amp meter. Okay. Now think about that. That's very, very tiny. So we have a huge gap between 30 million volts to a trillionth. Okay. In order to make a red blood cell turn into a stem cell. So how do we do that? Well, do you remember earlier when I said that the mitochondria produce water? Metabolic water. This is completely deuterium depleted water that hydrates melanin, that reduces this charge for this entire system to work appropriately. So, what we have is dehydrated melanin from David, going back to your point, from non native EMFs. Which blue light is a non native EMF. We are dehydrating the entire system. And what Dr. Yu just laid out was we can't control the electricity throughout and we burn it up. That is the problem. Like that is entirety of its problem. So we have to have melanin, we have to have it hydrated and we have to have the appropriate inputs to have the appropriate symphony that's going on in the cell.
So how do we hydrate the melanin part? Was that
Actually, it's red light and fat. Like that is
fat?
what you do. Fat
Like
through
eat
beta
consuming
oxidation.
fat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look at mitochondrial metabolism, you have this hierarchy of the moles of what water's produced based on. And fat is the highest, carbohydrates are the lowest. So you do not produce much metabolic water with carbohydrates. You produce the most with fats, and then in the middle is protein. And also, this is at complex 3 to where it is a energy, a red light hog. It loves red light. So you give it red light, red light, red light. This is part of why red light therapy works. It's still nowhere near as good as the sun. We need the infrared for all of this to work properly.
Yeah. What have you ever looked into the history of chromotherapy? You know, where they have these different color lights and they
Absolutely.
can you derive anything that we might be interested in there, you know, that can help us understand this?
So this is where it kind of goes back to what Dr. Yu was saying earlier, is like we have to get myopic to attempt to understand it. And when we get myopic, we fall into these traps, right? So when we go outside and we look, I think green is the perfect example of that. What do we see when we go outside in nature in a vibrant system? Green.
Green. Green.
We have a blue sky, we have white clouds, we have green foliage everywhere, right? And things that stand out are like a red bird or a berry, a fruit, a purple, right? So we have this. And so if you look at, say, a hospital, we go in there and this is a place of healing, right? We go in there, it's white or gray walls, right? The only plant in there is probably some fake thing that's covered in dust, right? We're pretending like the air is somehow the most toxic thing in the world. So we have these filtration systems. We have the windows closed, no light from the sun.
There's really blue light you see in every hospital
It's
room.
all blue light. You have all these machines that are going off that are hooked up to the internet or different Bluetooth that are producing this non-native. So when you take that example of why people die in hospitals versus what you see in nature, right? Now, simply going off of the colors that you're talking to, it's completely night and day. It just makes you question like everything that we think we know is not there. When you go outside and you look at grass and the trees and that, what colors are you exposed to? Nature had it right. God had it right in the design. It's these frontal lobes that got us in trouble. And so the color therapy, in my opinion, the best way to do that, go out in the woods, go to the creek, go hike.
Because the green color from everything around you is going to be uh, harmonizing with your body. What's happening there?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's
what's it
just
doing? What's it making? You got into the weeds there with the other stuff. What's going on when you're around that green foliage? Because people say I
it's
feel great when I go out in nature. What's happening? Tell people what's happening there.
there's a lot of different things, right? So you've got a typically a less of an impact of say 5G of the Wi-Fi signals of all of this. You've got the colors. I think that that's important. And the mechanism there is, I mean, we can get into it more, but your grounding is so important, and this goes into Dr. Yu's magnetism talks and stuff, and getting more in connection with the human resonance, right? Like there's this is why we got to be careful trying to get too myopic in the conversation of why is going out there doing something for the colors. You have plants produce all kinds of terpenes and phytochemicals that we inhale that have a physiological effect as well, right? But pine tree produces certain ones that have an impact. This is why, the Japanese forest bathing is so fascinating to me on the full spectrum of what's going on. The the getting in nature realigns everything I just lined out with the fidelity of the signal within the cell. It's the artificial environment does the opposite. Going back to the water hose thing, which one are we throwing off?
When I first, Dr. You and I first met, what I kept asking him, I said, look, your Yuan theory throws out so many foundational things that you're never going to get published in a lot of these journals because you have to pledge fidelity to certain presumptions before you can even have access to the door. And so it's kind of a club. And I said, you're gonna have to make predictions about discoveries and things that could be invented from those discoveries that somebody's going to have to do, or for you to, win the argument, because even though your argumentation is solid, that you're going to need a charismatic discovery to keep it over the edge. And so that's just the human nature problem, not a truth problem. Right. And so, some of the things that I asked Dr. Yu, I would ask him wacky things. Like I'd say, well, if your theory of the atom and the Yuan subatomic particles is correct, that everything is a magnet, how would you deal with cancer? And he said, I would think that antibiotics would be very effective at destroying cancer. And he explained the physics for why that is. And then we found independently of him, a guy who's become a friend of mine named Michael Lasanti, who was using the very antibiotic Z-Pak that Dr. Yu recommended from physics. How do you go from physics all the way to an oncologist using Z-Pak to kill cancer stem cells and completely heal breast cancer and various other types of cancers? That he's now demonstrated that over and over again independently. Dr. Yu didn't know about his work. We brought them together after we found him. But, that's the thing, folks, is that if you get your physics fundamental principles right, you can make downstream predictions about fields like what does physics and oncology have to say together? Well, if you talk to Logan, it has a lot, right? But for the average person, they're not even thinking about, well, I've got to talk to a physicist about cancer. You know what I mean?
Well, David, two things there, man. The first one is with Dr. Yu working for NASA. How do they evaluate life throughout the solar system? They look for light, water, and magnetism, right? This is what SETI does, what NASA does. You look at how this three-legged stool comes together to support life. Well, we can do the same thing within our own life. So this is why living at the Dead Sea is thrown off, right? This is why living in the middle of a desert is thrown off. This is why, because magnetism is missing in this three-legged stool. We're higher on the solar spectrum, we're lower on magnetism. So when you look at that in the context of, if we're going to search the solar system for this magical combination of light, water, and magnetism to support life, but somehow when we're here on Earth, we think that it's different to govern the biology of life, right? That's insane to me, right? That's insane. But
exactly correct. Yeah, you're right.
Well, and another example that you have like right there in your face is looking at Mark and Scott Kelly, right? The astronauts. Well, one goes up, they're twins. One goes up in the space station, spends whatever, 200, 300 days up there, comes back with osteoporosis, all kinds of hypermethylation, things that go on. And brother that's an identical twin has none of these issues. And it's because it's the environment, right? The environment of a space station is like living in LA. It's like living in Austin. It's like living in Miami. You're more like in a space station based off of the exposure you're getting than if you were in the mountains of, say, Montana, right? Like there is a completely different environmental exposure that you have. So what I'm telling you is that we are living our life more like the Kelly brother that was an astronaut than we are the one that wasn't.
Exactly. Yeah. The two twin brothers, when you said experience after long stay in the microgravity environment, right? almost a weightless environment and developed the symptom. His twin brother on Earth, both are NASA astronauts, and his brother is perfectly healthy. Is that what you got it?
That's what I'm saying. But
Oh
I'm
no,
saying it's more than just gravity, right? I'm saying it is the EMF exposure being
of course,
different, right? And so,
that's the
like when you
environment.
look at the osteoporosis that we see now, when you realize that bone is made up of collagen and apatite held together by a copper atom, and when we knock that copper atom off, we can't hold it together, and that's osteoporosis. That's osteoporosis that we're seeing on Earth.
Yes,
How does Logan? Because you've got a fount of knowledge here. It's fascinating. How does something like I saw recently a friend posted a study showing that thyroid hormone quote causes cancer cells to revert back to normal, and it's T3. The molecule does not kill the cells; it reverses the cancerization, turning brain cells back to normal, which is this differentiation that's healthy. And so he's saying that this thyroid hormone is not about killing the cells, but actually reversing them. That's something that this chemical compound should be able to do. What do you think of that, Logan?
I think this is exactly why you need to know physics. So, what is thyroid hormone, right? There's made out of aromatic amino acids and iodine. This has an emission and absorption spectrum. So, what it's actually doing is you're getting more light into the body to function properly based on everything that I just told you about the fidelity of the signal. When you don't have the appropriate input. So this is what hormones actually are. This is what vitamin D does. Anything that's made out of cholesterol, all of these functions absorb light and they emit light. So thyroid issues, we have an epidemic of thyroid issues because
Right.
that blue light in our face, right? So what you're seeing is you're having thyroid issues, right? Inappropriate light ferriers. That's what hemoglobin actually is too. It ferries light throughout the body. What cancer is, right? What cancer is a reversion. It's an atavistic approach to the environment, right? What we're doing, if you look at this is where you got to have some of the history that comes in too, and we probably don't have time to go through all of this. What happened at the Great Oxygenation Event, right? Whether you believe in evolution, creation, God, it doesn't really matter. There was a process at which things played out. Oxygen was toxic. So within cancer, we have what's referred to as the Warburg shift. All right, this is based off of Otto Warburg's work. The Warburg shift essentially means that oxygen is a toxin. Okay. This is where we reverted into a different form of metabolism, fermentation, as Warburg called it, to where we're not utilizing oxygen right. It's not as efficient, but what cancer cells are doing is are operating in a state more akin to bacteria. Okay, so mitochondria, they say it's a purple cyanobacteria that merged with a eukaryotic cell. So when you have a oxygen allergy, you have to have a different metabolism. Okay, so what causes that? That Warburg shift comes from the blue light. It comes from the that three-legged stool we were talking about being thrown off. Right, you tip the stool over, you remove a leg, it doesn't work properly. That fidelity of the signal, the timing, the exposure, the emission of light is so important. So thyroid, we need to understand what's happening with the aromatic amino acids, with the emission and absorption spectrums, how that's transferring this light throughout the body, the frequencies, right? And then how that is impacting the rest of the body. You're overcoming the blue light toxicity
Yeah.
that they're doing.
So when you see my friend Georgie Dinkoff has done some rodent studies recently. He's using vitamin B1, thiamine, B3, niacinamide, B7, biotin, and aspirin to knock out the most aggressive forms of cancer, and particularly mantle cell lymphoma in his rodent trials that he did. Total complete healing. The rodents lived a long, happy life, totally blew out any of the standard of care for cancer using those three simple B vitamins and aspirin at a dosage level, which is not toxic at all for humans if they were to use it as themselves. What do you think's going on with that, with your framework of light and everything? I like to see different things collide, and that's how I learn.
B vitamins are chromophores. So when we look at something like B12, right? That's a deficiency that's just epidemic, right? We have B12 anemia. We have regular anemia, iron, which is not the problem, and it's copper and light. When you have the understanding of everything I just said about the thyroid hormones, they're ferrying light for a certain function, right? We hear a lot about MTHFR, right? This is a methylation part of a gene where we're supposed to have more methylated folate, where folic acid is a toxin. You have to understand the emission and absorption spectrums of all of that. So, what I would highly recommend that you do is get your friend to understand the emission and absorption spectrum of every one of the things that he gave, B1, B7, aspirin included, and look at what is happening on the light side of that. Also, I think it's crazy to not have what I think is the most important variable ever to be included in every single study. So we have a nocturnal mammal that we're having under artificial lighting, and we're studying some sort of an isolated compound without taking into the totality of that environment at which they're in, right? That to me always has to be in there. And that's why I think probably 99% of the studies that we have are inaccurate, incomplete, or plain wrong, because you're taking that environment and you're altering it, right? What would they have done if they were in the sun in full spectrum? If it was the lighting was appropriate, they were studied in the dark versus in the light when they would have been sleeping, right? They're a
Yeah.
nocturnal
Yeah.
mammal. So when
You're talking about rodents. Yeah.
I'm talking about rodents, right?
Yeah.
So you you it's all light. It really, really, really is. And this is exactly how genes are expressed. They're slowed down or sped up on the timing and fidelity, the coherence of that signal.
Now, an average ordinary guy who's just totally new to this might say, well, gee, Logan, I mean, I know a lot of guys that are tan, out there working men, out there farming or landscaping, tan as can be, lots of light exposure, got their shirt off all the time, and they get cancer. They get this or that. They get this disease. They get that disease. Now, you probably just say it's because they're looking at the phone too or something. Or what would you say to that? Because you would think, okay, if the key is light, get as much light. These guys are getting as much light. And maybe if you did a study formally, you'd see maybe some better health outcomes. But generally, people just know a lot of guys that go to bars and stuff, they look really tan and they're still getting cancers like everybody else. So what's going on there?
Yeah. Well, I think you got to look at the data. They're not. And so when you look at one example of this is we have a lot of people we work with in LA that are tan and they have tanked vitamin D levels. So if UVB is what, synthesizes vitamin D and they're tan, we have a mismatch, right? Something's not working properly. The tan is not the only thing. Now, what did we lay out with Dr. Yu earlier about melanin and the electricity? If we have dehydrated melanin, we are shocking the system. Okay. So we've got to be hydrated. Where do they live? Let's say they're fit guys, right? They're going and they're spending 2 hours a day in a blue lit gym pumping weights in the stress and they're dehydrating themselves. That's actually, if you start looking at the people that are dying, right, post COVID for various reasons that I'm not going to get your channel banned, they're the ones that are dying, right? That's who's dying. When you start looking at what the lipid nanoparticles are doing, what SV40 is doing, when you realize what's happening, that's not why they're dying. They're not dying from the tan, right? That's the one thing that's probably prolonging their life. So get a tan, get out of the artificial environments. If they're living in Miami and they have cancer and they're tan, I just told you the space station example, right? They're living in a space station. So all of that is interrelated. So if somebody has cancer, get into nature, get appropriate sunlight, full spectrum, clean it
You got to
up.
start
lower
off
the
slow.
gear.
Do people need to start off slow if they haven't built up layers of
This is what's called the solar callus. Okay, this is kind of Jack Cruse's way of laying all of this out. And so you have to prime. This is where I mentioned Palm C at the beginning of this conversation. You prime the body with infrared light. When we get up in the morning, we see the sunrise. What color is it? It's pink, it's orange, it's red, right? This is a full blast of this infrared light. This primes the entire system, including melatonin, right? Melatonin is, we hadn't even got into that in the circadian timing of this entire system. When we get the things lined out by light, we get it. So then what comes next? If we look at the spectrum of the light throughout the day, we get into UVA, right? UVA actually, really cool, releases nitric oxide locally. So where the sun touches your skin, it releases nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. So now we start connecting. Why do we see this blood pressure epidemic? Well, people are not in the sun, right? Or they're covered up. So then this preps what's called melanocytes, right? These are the cells that produce melanin to get active, get ready. Then UVB comes in and it actually converts and produces the melanin, right? And so it's this entire system. And then it goes the exact opposite way for sunset. So you being exposed, yeah. So when we say live in Little Rock, Arkansas, we work at a school or at a hospital or at an office. We're inside all the time. We're not exposed. And then we go down to Destin for the week and we have not been exposed to the sun and we're wearing sunglasses and we get fried. That's completely different, right? When you have a constant daily practice of being sun exposed, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Do people think, like, I'm just trying to get to the basic practical things that people are probably asking. So how much time is an ideal amount for people that have jobs and everything else normal? Not everybody gets to work out in the nature. How much time should people shoot for on average to get out and get sun exposure? You know,
just as much as possible.
Yeah, but is there a radiate? Like if you get 2 hours, you're pretty healthy. If you get 8 hours, you're going to be super healthy. If you get 30 minutes, it's not enough. I mean, people just like to know. People like in basics, you know, keep it simple, stupid stuff, you know?
As much as you can. Construct your life around getting it. So like in the morning, watch that sunset, drink your coffee on the porch, right?
Yeah.
If you have a lunch break, go eat outside. If you're able to get off early, go to the park. Like whatever. It is literally, David, as much as you possibly can. Because if I say it's 30 minutes, people are going to just like shoot for 30 minutes and think that it's enough, right? And there's not that the bell curve doesn't work like that with what we live in, because how we repair these heme proteins that are getting destroyed? I laid out liberated vitamin A earlier, infrared and UV light. So you're healing. So that is a therapy. It is a modality when you are in the sun.
Yeah. Dr. Yu, I want to land the plane. Any last thoughts or questions you have?
Yes, I do have. Based on the discussion, I do have some kind of thoughts I want to share with our audience. One thing about, let's say light can help you, cure cancer. So I try to say, what's the underlying mechanism? So underlying light, exposed light, basically is create electricity at this kind of visible light frequency, create the resonance in your body. And this resonance itself, and try to excite and so try to regulate everything else, within certain range. So that's why, radioactive at a high frequency, like a blue lights induced or deuterium, this kind of, neutrons, this kind of oscillation. So because you add this kind of regulation, at the resonance of and light, healthy light, coherent light, or induced electricity environment can help you regulate the shielding and preventing this kind of cancer growth. I thought that's one thing. And then another thing I thought about, I connected this one with, remember, David, we interviewed another biologist that's called Michael Levin. Remember him?
Yeah, we had him on recently.
Yes, months ago, right? Very famous one. He tried to make a healthy body and cure cancer or make healthy body through apply electrical voltage. Okay, so which come to the same thing. Your sunlight generate bioelectricity in your body and create a resonance, and that everything vibrate at that resonance. So that's why prevent anything oddballs, oscillating at a higher damaged pressure. So that's one thing. So that connected with me. His principle apply electricity can help atoms come back together instead of some kind of called cancer cell being rejected by other part, right? Become something. So then, if you've been contained in a healthy cell, it regulate you. You may grow back to healthy. But if you reject isolated, right? Now you grow wild. So that's why. So that's his. He said how to avoid that happens. Use electrical voltage. Now, come to one friend I met at the Home Depot. I tried to purchase something. He's very friendly, gather the things for me, and somehow we becomes a friend. He told me one thing about it, which is useful, I believe, for cure cancer, and which is similar to light therapy. He said that you wear a called jacket called electro-capacitive cancer therapy. It's a jacket. Like what is it? Like a military word that's protect you. This kind of bulletproof jacket have a different voltage apply from the back and the forth. I said I never heard of it. So I said, why do you believe that one? He said that he was injured while working at the Home Depot, lift up what is 100 or 1,000 pounds something, injured his waist. And then he said, based on the damage, is very heavy falling. And so based on the damage, the doctor and all the evaluation said you need at least 6 months before you can recover to formal. And I believe he said Home Depot has a good insurance. So then he actually went to another therapy, used this called the electro voltage jacket, called the ECC therapy. That was I wanted to read the name of that one. I believe I thoroughly believe that would help. It's called the ECCT, called the electro-capacitance cancer therapy. So it is basically a life jacket, just like save people in the room. Apply slightly voltage between. So what happens if you apply the right? This voltage help you resonate your cell. Can resonate, keep your cell coherent, resonant at a certain frequency. So prevent called damaged cancer cell. Cancer cell is a damaged cancer cell. It grow wild. If you can regulate them and use electromagnetic wave, that's the voltage, electro voltage, apply that one, can help you feel. He said it's just 1 week. He almost feels like all done. And then the second week, he feels he no longer need anything. He got rid of it. And he's now full-time return back to work at that one. That remind me, oh my goodness, human healthy body vibrating at a certain frequency, healthy frequency, which is the same thing you said, light may oscillating frequency. I do believe that one. If you under green light, that's the most friendly to biology lives. Probably that's the energy for biological life to grow. That's the energy for them to survive. So that's why you use that to regulate you. So that's why you said, hey, your son young and then easy to recover. But for older people, you may not enough for yourself, your sunlight self and can kill that one. Maybe that's use ECCT. Yeah. That's a jacket that may help you kill. I believe help you recover healthy, probably can kill cancer too.
Yeah. I think that what we've always got to be careful with the technologies is the aberrant effect, right? Like what we don't.
You're right.
And so yes. Like when we can do the essentially the safety of the natural way of I think that's always kind of the
natural way is always
right?
the first to try. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
But what that sounds like to me is it goes back to what I said about Robert O'Becker's work with the red blood cell and the stem cells under the 1/1,000,000th of an amp, right? Like we're converting stem cells for healing. Like potentially, right? Just hypothesizing why that method, that jacket worked. But also we release stem cell depots with nitric oxide. I think that's really important. So the healing frequencies have to go. So what is nitric oxide, right? Like how do we get that? Well, I already told you with the sunlight, right? Like that it works focally. Also, this is why I think things like massages and even acupuncture, like this alloy, it releases this nitric oxide, and that's a really really important big deal.
That's very good. We had the late great Dr. Ray Peat on our show many times too, and one of the things he always talked about was, the link between altitude and cancer. And the lowest rates of obesity, the lowest rates of cancer, which both are related to hypoxia, lack of oxygen, are in places like Colorado. I looked it up online. The highest altitude counties have the lowest rates of these mortality cases Do you think that's because of the cosmic radiation, or is that the CO2? What do you think? I mean, because he thought it was mostly due to the effect of retaining more CO2 in the body when you get up at that lower oxygen level.
Yeah, well, what I tell you what cancer is, it's a Warburg shift. Oxygen is an allergy.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, Logan. Can you tell us where we can follow your work and folks who want to get interested in sunlight therapy and all the things you've kind of referenced today?
Yeah, just my name, Logan Duvall, and then Sowing Prosperity. That's like the agricultural context, SOWING. That'll pull me up across the different platforms.
Next time, Dr. Yu, we got to get into why photons are not particles. That there's no such thing as light particles traveling. That
was the next episode.
Yeah. All right.
There we go.
Thanks, Logan. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
And you can email us hello@aneighborschoice.com with your comments, or of course, drop them in the comment section wherever you're watching this program. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.
Not the